reduce the time to get to fake explanations.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, let's jump right in here.
once upon a time, there was an instructor who taught physics students. One day, the instructor called them into the classroom, showed them a wide, square plate of metal next to a hot radiator. The students each put their hands on a plate and found the side next to the radiator to be cool, the distant side was warm, and the instructor said, "Why do you think that happens?" Some students guessed convection of air currents, others guessed strange metals in the plate. They devised many creative explanations, none stooping so low as to say, "I don't know," or "This seems impossible." And the answer was, maybe, what were you going to say, Anish?
Oh, well, go ahead and give the answer spoiler.
And the answer was, before the students entered the room, the instructor turned the plate around.
Yeah, and this is kind of like famous in rationalist circles now. First of all, because it's sort of like a great gotcha, right? But I feel
Kind of, go on, but
well, I feel like it's a little unfair that he says none stooped so low as to say I don't know or this seems impossible, because like that might be something you would say in a more normal setting, but like when the teacher has presented you with this challenge, you assume first of all that there is an answer, and that it is an answer you can deduce because the teacher has given you this challenge, right? It's like, here is an exercise
Yeah.
for the student, please figure it out. So they were like guessing and trying to, well, that's the thing, they were guessing as opposed to trying to figure it out, which is why this is so closely linked to guessing the teacher's password, which is the next post. But so like I felt like it was a little unfair, but it really, he makes a damn good point about how much guessing there was being done and how schools are being. You know what? I'm going to stop right there before I spoil the next one. Go ahead, Stephen.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that if, like, to be pedantic, the teacher in the real world could be nature, and in in this particular case, there was an answer, and they could have guessed it. They could have said, "Okay, I feel like I was asked the wrong question." Now, granted, that's not how things work in school. They usually ask you questions with straightforward answers based on what you've learned. Uh, I don't know if this might be like, is this an apocryphal story or does it have a citation? It doesn't actually matter, but
It was once
like,
upon a time, dude.
so once upon a time, um, so it could be the sort of thing. I try to think of an example like that could have come up in any formal education I had, since I didn't take high level physics courses. Um, it's it seems like a good way to get, like, to train the student to say, yes, sometimes things are confusing and it is okay to say I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
I think
think
that's the exact point that Eliezer's trying to make, is that, like, I was actually going to basically say what both of you had said. Ineash, you were talking about how you don't think it's fair to the student, and I agree, because you are not, like, that's not the way schools work. You're
right.
not actually being asked to think, you're being asked to, like, memorize stuff for the test. Not always, but just, like, there's so much, what is the word, accountability, I guess, that teachers are held to, that they don't have a lot of time to develop good curricula, and they spend all their time, attending meetings, grading tests, and then, like, having to be evaluated forever.
And like teaching it, like they're evaluated on like passing scores of their students to tests that they didn't get to write more often than not, right? So
I
the
think
state or
so.
the district writes these tests, and it's like, okay, well, I feel like this is the worst way and worst order in which to teach college algebra, but that's the way I was told to do it. So good luck, kids.
I gotta.
I think that's the. Sorry, what?
Oh, I gotta say that this mythical teacher is a darn good teacher, though, because he is probably for the first time in these students' lives exposing them to the idea that, like, hey, you shouldn't just be trying to figure out the correct answer for the test. Maybe you should actually think about things like your teacher's a dick and flipped it before you came in here.
Yeah.
Or your teacher's trying to make you think,
I feel,
which might be a dick move.
some of my teachers were trying to make me think. It was I had some pretty decent teachers. Not all of them, but a few.
Yeah, I had a real mix of good and bad ones. Um,
So Eliezer says that to consider the answer the student gave of maybe because of heat conduction. He says, I ask, is this answer a proper belief? Do the words actually control anticipation? if you say heat conduction, what experience does that lead you to anticipate? Under normal circumstances, it leads you to anticipate that if you put your hand on the side of the plate near the radiator, that side will feel warmer than the opposite side. So he points out that in terms of that phrase, you should ponder the little innocent phrase "because of," which comes before heat conduction. Ponder some of the other things we could put after it. We could say, for example, because of phlogiston or because of magic. Because of heat conduction is used in such fashion, it's like saying magic. It feels like an explanation, but it's not.
Hence, fake explanations.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. I think it's a really succinct and awesome and super memorable lesson. Like, I've never forgotten this parable since the first time I read it.
Yeah.
I've not only never forgotten it, but I catch myself doing this, and I try to stop and be aware of the fact that, like, it's like, wait a minute, I actually don't assign very high confidence to that thing I just said. Do I actually know this, or did I just hear this somewhere and, like, it's just kind of been accepted because I heard it from maybe an authority figure, or maybe it was a scientific journal, but maybe it was a shitty one. You know?
Yeah,
Yep.
I have a similar thing like that with my autobiographical memory. And so, like, when I think I remember something, I, like, will immediately be like, you know what, I don't know how strongly I remember that. And even if I did remember it strongly, it doesn't mean it really happened. And I think because of that accidentally, like, ingrained thought pattern, a lot of my actual memories get thrown into the junk bucket in my brain. And thus
Yeah.
my autobiographical memory is terrible. I doubt I'm missing anything important.
The less
I'm sure if it was important, I'd remember it.
the less tied you are to your specific memories, the less you need them to be intact when you're unfrozen.
Right. And also, I said that last one with a nod and a wink, but no one could hear that. So
Yeah, we need to, like, start being, like, I don't know, describing our facial expressions and stuff.
Wink, wink, nudge,
insert
nudge.
joke. Exactly.
Raised eyebrow. Magic, you cry. That's not a scientific explanation. Indeed, the phrases because of heat conduction and because of magic are readily recognized as belonging to different literary genres. Heat conduction is something that Spock might say on Star Trek, whereas magic would be said by Giles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. However, as Bayesians, we take no notice of literary genres. It's really funny because I think a lot of Methods of Rationality was Harry kind of pattern matching everything to fantasy novels that he had read.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the
Explicitly in a lot of cases.
Yeah, well, I mean, the arc that we just started, the Azkaban arc, he explicitly thinks of it in the beginning as like, okay, I am finally getting my intro quest from my wise mentor, and soon I will be, harrowed and have this experience, but it will make me stronger for the future, and I can finally step into my destiny.
Yeah, he literally thinks of it in terms of, like, leveling up.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
completing this narrative arc that all heroes have to complete.
I think I remember a scene where he received something and he's like, aha, my first quest item.
Yes. Oh God, I remember when Dumbledore gave him the Father's Rock, and he tried to leave, and the door was locked, and Dumbledore was like, "You didn't take your Father's Rock." He's like, "Oh yeah, of course. You can't leave the area without taking the quest item."
Yeah, that was the line I was going to mention, is that, oh yeah, it would be foolish of me to think the door would open before I put the quest items in my inventory. I feel like the bag of holding was a great little literary trick to, like, let him, play to that perfect fantasy of his where it's like, yep, this is my inventory, everything in this bag and my pockets.
I
Absolutely.
want one so bad.
Yeah.
I just want Hammer Space to be real.
Hammer space?
I think it's a TV tropes thing. You know,
Okay.
like
What
in
is-
cartoons where a character will pull a very large hammer out of their pocket.
Oh, okay,
It's just
okay.
nonsensically big.
Yeah.
Did you see Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking of that scene.
Yeah. Inyash, have you seen it?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you haven't, it's a treat. At the end, John Mulaney, the pig, gives him his hammer.
That was
and
John
as they're all
Mulaney?
leaving. Yeah. And so he's like, here, take this hammer. And it's like huge. It's like, it can fit in your pocket. It
And he said it while crying because, like, they were all leaving.
was perfect.
All right, on to guessing the teacher's password.
Yes.
Yeah, trying to see if there's anything else that we missed.
I guess the one thing from the very end that I would like to point out before we go is that he says the deeper error of the students is not simply that they failed to constrain their anticipation. The deeper error is that they thought they were doing physics, even though they were simply just moving their magic from one literary genre to another.
Love it.
Yeah. The thing
And I can
that oh, go ahead, Steven.
I was just going to say really quick, I can see how this post flows into the next one. I think that might have been actually how this worked in reality rather than my initial guess of like just like kind of separating them into two. I think often like he'll make a couple of points in a post and then there'll be discussion and he's like, okay, yeah, I can further elaborate on this point. And that's what this next one is. But what were you going to say, Jace?
I was gonna say, oh, did I just forget it? Hang on.
Oh no, that's on me.
Oh right. I think at least you could imagine that this somewhat corrects itself later on when you say like graduate from physics school and start working in a physics lab, and now you have to care about what reality is or isn't doing.
Yeah, but like almost every student in high school went through a physics class where they had to repeat these words, and a minuscule fraction of them will actually go to a physics lab. So most people learned the wrong lesson.
What's the wrong lesson that they could learn?
The wrong lesson is that the thing that you do is not try to constrain anticipation. The thing you do is try to guess the teacher's password.
Oh, sure, but I think even for the non-physicists to come out of this lesson, they're going to say, oh yeah, sometimes I'll be confronted with a problem that I was trying to answer incorrectly.
Oh, you mean this specific lesson? Yeah, I think everyone would get the right lesson from this one, but I mean from physics classes in general that do not have this specific trickery in them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's unfortunately school in a nutshell.
For most people.
So, yeah.
My physics class
Yeah.
was amazing because my physics teacher like really cared about physics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to generalize over much, but if it wasn't physics, it might have been biology. It might have been one chemistry teacher you had or something.
Right.
But I think it's even just math, where like it's not supposed to be password guessing, but often you're just like trying different things. Like I remember that on multiple choice math questions where it'd be, okay, let me try this function. I remember them showing us at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, the answer I got isn't any one of these four. Let me try this other one because I just didn't understand what I was doing.
Yeah, they teach math terribly. They have you just like the thing that always bugs me is that when students I hear this story from so many people, when a student has figured out a way to solve a problem that's not the official algorithm, then they will get yelled at and told to do it the correct way. We're learning this one, and I'm just it's like they don't actually want kids to understand how math works.
Yeah, that stupid like multiplying thing where like they're drawing lines between the numbers or something. I've seen that.
Are you talking about Common Core?
Must be. I think so. Yeah, that rings a bell. That would drive me insane. That would not help me multiply in my head.
I had to. I was helping kids with homework when I worked at the library. There's a school across the street, and the kids would all come over, and I had to use YouTube videos to teach myself how to do the Common Core version that they were expected to do. And actually, I think that it makes sense as an introductory long multiplication.
Yeah, it's just a different algorithm to get the same answers.
Yeah, my problem is that if they make you do it that way, and if you just do it another way, they're like, no, sorry, you didn't draw the lines and fill in the little, partial numbers above the lines. I feel like if you get the right answer, that should be the right answer, and they shouldn't care how you get there, which all the good teachers did. I don't know if they're allowed to do that now or how that works, but luckily I'm not in school, so
yeah,
those poor fuckers.
It's good at guessing the teacher's password.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one's a lot of fun. I don't have to take charge on it. I'll just say that this is another one that I never forgot, and I think that dive into it, Inyash.
Okay. It starts off with EY relating how he thought that he knew what light was at 9 years old because he read up on it, and he read that light is made of waves. And then later on, when he actually did a lot more reading on physics and contemplating and realizing how light worked, he realized that when he was 9, he didn't know shit. He just knew the phrase light is made of waves and believed that. And he says that there's this instinctive tendency to think that if a physicist says light is made of waves, and the teacher says, what is light made of? And the student says waves, then the student has made a true statement. But he says that this is just a sequence of syllables. The sequence of syllables made of waves or because of heat conduction, it's not a hypothesis. It's just a pattern of vibrations traveling through the air. And in school, a teacher hands you a gold star, or an A or whatever, for saying made of waves, which must be the correct answer because the teacher heard a physicist emit the same sound vibrations. And since verbal behavior is what gets the gold star, students think that verbal behavior has a truth value. After all, either light is made of waves or it isn't, right? And then he says, ties it right back into the last into the last post. If a teacher asks you why the far side of a metal plate feels warmer than the side near the radiator, if you say, I don't know, you have no chance of getting a gold star. You don't even get credit for class participation if you say, I don't know. So all the incentives are aligned for you to make some sort of guess, no matter how bad that guess is. And if you've heard phrases that the teacher have said in that semester that are like because of heat convection or because of heat conduction, then maybe one of those is what the teacher wants. So you say, maybe because of heat conduction? But that's not a hypothesis about the metal plate. It's not even a proper belief. It's just an attempt to guess the teacher's password.
Yeah. So I remember being in classes where the students were actually encouraged to make as many random guesses, as class participation, and there's no wrong answers, or but just shouting whatever random thing you can think of is very much an example of this thing.
Yeah, and
it's not even like trying to generate a bunch of hypotheses.
No,
that's really what you should be doing. You should be maybe actually guessing a bunch of random things, but then maybe you make a word cloud and start making correlations or start testing some of the things. But
he said, if you actually believed that, because of heat diffusion, maybe you would start measuring a few different points with a thermometer at a few different times and trying to predict what it would say on the next measurement, because then that's something connected to an experience rather than just a verbal behavior.
I remember, and it's really, it's hard to say, or at least for me to briefly articulate what the difference is between knowing something and knowing the password. But I remember when I was reading the Feynman lectures, there was a part where, and I'd known all these bits before, but he brought it home with one perfect example about how, how do I put this succinctly without taking 3 minutes? You've got a vessel of hot liquid, and why is it hot? Because all the atoms are moving on average pretty fast. And why does it get colder? Because the fast ones escape, and they occasionally slow down inside, but the really fast ones get escape velocity from the surface, and that's why a flatter, wider vessel will cool faster than a small, narrow one. So as the fast ones escape, the average velocity of all the molecules in the vessel goes down, so the temperature goes down. And this is why a spoonful of soup gets cooler when you blow on it. And I'm just that's perfect. I already knew that, I could blow on a spoonful of soup and it would cool down. And I knew all the other parts involved, but I think that was one of Feynman's just true gifts, that he could illustrate things in a way that sound kind of, and granted, a lot of his stuff is sort of esoteric by, everyone's day-to-day standards, but tie it down to something as mundane as how you blow on soup, right? Well, here's what's going on. I thought that was just outstanding.
Yeah.
You were asking, or you were saying that you didn't really understand the difference between knowing a thing and then knowing the password. I
said I couldn't quickly articulate it.
Yeah, I think I would quickly articulate it as a difference in having good or bad thinking habits. There's this automatic reaction that's kind of working on muscle memory or instinct, but actually taking the time to have epistemic humility and, first of all, admit that you don't know to yourself or to other people, and then try to figure out what to do from there. I think that's also an uncomfortable step for a lot of people to take.
Yeah.
People seem to be more comfortable with just making up a... have you ever seen this kind of interaction between people where they see something weird? I don't know, they see a bug doing something weird, and they're like, oh man, what's that bug doing? and people will just be like, oh, maybe it's doing that thing. Yeah, okay. Like,
I
nobody
think,
like pulls their phone out to Google it or something.
yeah, I think a lot of I know Wes specifically in the Discord has a problem with EvoPsych, and I think a lot of it is because EvoPsych is more about guessing passwords than actually trying to create explanations.
Yeah, it's just his issue is that it's largely non-testable, which I think he takes his. I think he takes too much issue with it.
Yeah, I think some of it
There's a
is
lot.
obviously correct, but
Yeah, there's inferences you can draw from comparing our behaviors to other animals to looking at uh, hunter-gatherers that are still living that way in modern day.
I do think he has a point that it is sometimes overused, especially in pop culture.
It very much is, and a lot of it is well, like some of it is the social psychologists, but some of it's and yeah, maybe more of it is like psychology today, or like whatever pop science outlet is interpreting whatever study just came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think all pop science is guilty of being abusable and like misinterpreted by the masses, right?
Well, they actually actively will change the meaning of something in order to make it more clickable. I remember distinctly there was this article that was published in some journal. I don't remember, but whatever site, whatever like uh, Wired or whatever had. I shouldn't diss Wired. I actually like Wired. Whatever bad psychology publication had ended up writing an article about it for the masses, had titled it uh, what was it? It was autism or autistic children are shown to have more masculine faces than average, uh, lending some credibility to the belief that autism means like an extreme male brain.
Hmm.
And I was like, that doesn't seem right. And then I read the article, and the article said that actually the children had more androgynous faces.
Huh.
Like, and it didn't, I don't think it mentioned anything about the extreme male brain theory. It was
Yeah,
just
using
like, it was
headlines to
literally
try to-
like, yeah, they're trying to find something
Yeah.
sensationalist and controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw one on. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but since I don't follow any of that stuff, because mainly like those resources, they always, I read once a month, or I hear secondhand once a month, and then I'm shown an article about how we're going to be destroyed by a meteorite or something, and it's like, oh no, it's passing within 1,000 kilometers of us. We'll be fine. Like I remember at some point someone last year asked me like, hey, is there like, are we going to get hit by a meteorite next year? Has this crossed your radar yet? And I was like, no, and I'm pretty sure if like it was going to happen, I would have heard about it.
Right.
So I didn't even feel the need to look into it. I did remember that at some point Stephen Colbert had on Neil deGrasse Tyson and asked him about it, and he shut it down. But what was I going to say? It was like vapors. People who use nicotine or who vape to get nicotine have like the same cardiovascular issues, or can have the same cardiovascular issues as people who smoke. And then the sample size consisted 100% of people who used to smoke.
There's so much data manipulation going on in vaping studies, and I think I think some of it is the tobacco companies trying to badmouth vaping because they're taking their business away, and then a lot of it is just people that want to demonize whatever is like the popular thing.
Yeah.
I remember
Is that what it is? Just people hating things being popular?
this is a trend that I see all the time. Remember, like people were eating Tide Pods, and then suddenly it was like all teenagers are now eating Tide Pods, and here's why you shouldn't. And I was looking for.
Now it's just the president.
Oh, here's a yeah. Here's the thing. I was looking for engagement rings because Phoenix and I might do that, and I came across a photo of someone who had these transdermal implants of like 3 diamonds in their finger, and it was I suddenly remembered this article. It came out like a few years ago, but it was like millennials are ditching the traditional wedding ring in favor of implantable, like piercing. It was like one person had done this. Somebody had seen the photos of it and just made the next logical leap, which is like this entire generation is going to stop buying wedding rings and get transdermal implants instead, which I think I saw it on Tumblr originally, which was they had just kind of taken whoever posted it had taken a screenshot of mainly centered on the title, and you could see some of the article, and they just wrote in all caps, "No, they're fucking not."
Yeah, millennials are killing the diamond industry, and it's just I work at a grocery store.
Good,
It's
kill
like
the
the reply,
diamond
right?
industry.
Yeah,
Fuck the diamond industry. I don't want your
yeah,
blood
we didn't do
diamonds.
diamonds for ours.
Like, you can make a perfect diamond so cheaply.
Yeah, that's mainly why I wasn't into it. And then yeah, diamonds aside, we can wrap up the password guessing, which is, I think, yeah, he relates back to the school system, and he says in the school system it's all about verbal behavior, whether written on paper or spoken aloud. Verbal behavior gets you a gold star or a failing grade. Part of unlearning this bad habit is becoming consciously aware of the difference between an explanation and a password. It happened to me when I was 9 years old, not because I was stupid, but because this is what happens by default. This is how human beings think, unless they are trained not to fall into this trap. Humanity stayed stuck in holes like this for thousands of years. And I think this is another good time to reiterate like how useful it is to read up on the history of science. I think part of the reason that science seems so like boring and opaque and just mundane to people is that people look at whatever interesting thing, like I can flip a switch on my wall and the light comes on the ceiling, and I have a vague-ish idea of why that happens, but like most people aren't inclined to like take it as like, holy shit, you can just create light like that. It's not a miracle to them because they assume that the explanation is mundane because they know it's understood. But like there's such a difference between well, I guess to put it in historical context, like basically everything we know is not stuff that was like always understood. Well, essentially everything we know. And so there's just this tendency to like, especially when learning chemistry, you start with like the Bohr model or something, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, this is 200 years old. For the rest of human history, we had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
But we're going to start with the thing 200 years ago because it's where we start chemistry.
Well, it's not just that we didn't know what was going on, it's that we thought we did know because we had a password that was, fulfilling someone's requirements. Yeah, exactly. Or not necessarily always God, but yeah, something like that. Like this is the case because of this belief that we have, but it feels like you know something and you have an explanation, but you really don't because you can't use that to constrain what you believe in any way. And so for thousands of years, you think you have an explanation and you don't look deeper.
Yeah, if you're wondering why lightning destroyed your neighbor's house, Thor did it isn't an explanation. Like, because then you won't be able to predict whose house is going to get struck next.
And maybe it's the guy that was pissing on Thor.
So, I mean, that's one way you could test it. You could see if the person was a blasphemer, and so was the next 5. Or you could see, oh, that person had on a very decorative, aluminum or metal pipe sticking out of their house.
Or they had a very, very large tree that was the tallest tree in the neighborhood, like, that was actually sitting too close to the house, and some metal shutters.
Yeah.
To be a little specific.
Oh, is that what happened to your
totally.
house?
That's my working hypothesis.
Okay.
Have you ruled out the possibility that Thor just hates you?
I actually am more convinced that I'm more convinced that Thor was trying to help, because that actually worked out pretty well for me. I was trying to sell this house. It wasn't that the market was terrible. I wanted to get out. So I got insurance money, which ended up being like more than I would have gotten for trying to sell the house. I got out quickly. All worked out.
Praise be to Thor.
Yeah.
Well, our next two LessWrong posts will be Science as Attire and Fake Causality.